Hey everybody, this is my 40 breeder, and recently I added some Siamese algae eaters to this tank, and they wound up starting a whole chain of events with the other algae eating fish in this tank, and long story short, it's now looking beautiful, and I'm really happy with this tank. This started out as my African tank years ago. It then morphed into my black ghost knifefish tank, and it is now what I'm simply calling my 40 breeder. Over the years, the stock has changed here and there and sort of morphed into from one tank to another, but the tank itself has not. This is the way I set it up years ago. And believe it or not, all of that Anubias you see against the glass there, that's the original Anubias that I put in here. So is that little clump on the woodwork up there. That's 6 years old now, probably at least. And it's only that big. And the temple plant came a little later, but it's still fairly early on. And then I can never remember what this other stuff, I always want to call it Val, but I think it's Sag, Val, something like that. I don't know. Again, it's academic to me. I don't really care what it's called. And then I've got this big piece of Anubias that I did add a little later. This came out of another one of my tanks, and you can see it's growing well enough that I've got a nice little new shoot coming off of it. But it's interesting that this other stuff stayed so tiny. I don't know if it's a different species or what, but I always thought it sort of dwarfed or stunted when it got in here, and that's why it has stayed so small. But the point is, this is how this tank has looked for the last several years, many years, since I set it up. And only now is it really finally starting to look the way I imagined it would look when I set it up all those years ago. You can see all the woodwork, but there's still lush green growth. There's lots of caves for the fish to swim around in. And then, of course, we've got all of the activity of the fish. I finally took my 7 of these little Australian rainbowfish you can see here. They're not particularly flashy for rainbowfish. They are the sort of low-budget beginner rainbowfish. Right there you can see 2 of my dwarf neon rainbowfish, which are absolutely stunning. But these little rainbows here, they will get bigger and they will get more colorful as they grow, but they stay small enough that I think the school will be able to stay in here. I've debated whether or not to get more of these dwarf neon rainbows here. I have access to them, but they're not cheap. And out of the 7 of them I put in here, I've only got 2 left, and it's only been about a year, I guess. I'm not really sure what happened. I've had a couple of different viewers say that that's fairly typical. They just die a lot. It's not necessarily the tank conditions. Even in pristine conditions, they just seem to be a finicky fish that doesn't really survive a lot. So if that's the case, then maybe, on one hand, I think, well, if it wasn't my fault, if it's not that my tank conditions aren't right, then maybe I could try again. But on the other hand, if it's going to be a simple, oh, well, they just die a lot no matter what your tank conditions are like, that's kind of risky to spend a lot of money on fish that die a lot for no apparent reason. They're just finicky fish, we'll say. So I'm still on the fence about whether or not I want to add any more of them. It depends. I'll talk to the guy down at the fish store and see if he can hook me up on a deal or something, give me a discount if I buy 5 of them, or, maybe even buy more than that. But at this point, the tank is starting to get a little busy. I do have a lot of fish going on in there now, so we probably don't want to add too many more fish. But those rainbow fish are just awesome, and the way they school together like that is great. We're only down to 2 of them, and yet they still swim around, as a pair at this point. So when I had 6 or 7 of those neon rainbows in there, they were just awesome. I loved it. And so I really would like to get them back again. I really just don't think that these little Australian rainbow fish are going to live up to the sort of reputation I've come to expect from rainbow fish. I've got some rainbow fish in another tank that are just stunning as well. And when I think rainbow fish, I think of just bright, vibrant colors, and I'm not so sure those Australians are going to live up to that. But we'll see. They're still young. They've got years to grow into the tank, and, I guess we'll find out as time goes on. The other thing I've done to this tank is I turned the forward light fixture on. I was having so many algae issues before I put those Siamese algae eaters in there that I reduced it to this one single fixture, and now I've got it back to the way I had it before, whereas this fixture is more towards the rear of the tank, and then this one's up towards the front rather than one down the center. It just changes the whole feel of the tank. Not only do you see the fish better, and not only do you get all those vibrant colors right up here, right in the front. I mean, you can see my guppies, all of them. They just look great up here in the front of the tank. Now, when you've got the light in the middle, you know, as soon as the fish swim in front of that middle section of the tank, they're now backlit, and you're looking more at silhouettes than you are, you know, the colors of the fish. So having that light fixture up in the front of the tank, especially in this deep tank, this tank is 40 breeder, so we've got, you know, 18 inches depth on it. Having one light down the middle is really a strange sort of way to light this tank. It creates shadows up front. You know, if you put the light in the front, and again, if you've only got the one light across the front, the back of the tank is so shadowed. That can look interesting, you know. It can give you the sort of feel of like looking off into the distance underwater. You don't see the wood paneling on the wall back there. This is one of my few tanks that I don't actually have anything draped behind it. But again, it was just so dark in the back of the tank that it just wasn't worth it. And this way, I don't know, this might be a little too much light, but we'll see. Now that I've got those algae eaters in there, I'm not too worried about all the light flooding the tank and making the algae grow. Because remember, I've also got the that shining into this tank too. If you'll notice, it actually puts, well, you can't really see the shadow in the tank because of the lights overhead, but I mean, you can see how much light is actually shining into that tank. When I turn this tank lights off, we can use that LED over there that lights up my waterfall tank. That's enough to pretty much light this tank, at least, you know, most of the tank. This corner tends to get a little dark, but that LED is already lighting the tank up that much. And now we've got two more LED fixtures across the top. Both of these fixtures are LED. They're calling them shop lamps, but they have a single tube, very similar to fluorescent, but that's just a plastic diffuser. There's a strip of LEDs underneath of this to give it that appearance. So it looks like a T8, but is actually a plastic diffuser tube over a strip of LEDs, and that's really bright. That's I can't even remember how many lumens it was, and I know lumens are for humans, but I'm human, and I'm just trying to tell you how bright it looks to me, not, you know, what it's actually doing for my plants or anything like that. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm just saying it's a really bright, it's like a 1500 or 1800 lumen light or something. It's meant to be a shop light, so it's probably even more than that. It's probably a 2000 lumen light if it's meant to be a shop light. And I've got two of them on there. So, again, just from a luminosity point of view, it's a very, very brightly lit tank now. So, it'll be interesting to see with all that excess light flooding the tank if we don't have another little sort of explosion of algal growth, and whether or not those Siamese algae eaters are up to the task of handling it. And, of course, I got all those guppies in there, and I've got that Panda Molly back there. You can see her up in the upper right hand corner. All of the live bearers are good algae eaters. They don't eat all types of algae, but of the algae they do eat, they're a pretty efficient algae eater. But so far in my experience, nothing can compare with these Siamese algae eaters. These things are just the bee's knees when it comes to eating algae. I can't believe how effective they are. You know, I was expecting results. I was expecting good things, but I'm just overjoyed with how effective they were. And as I said, once they cleared away some of the less desirable algae that they will eat, they kind of cleared the path for all the other fish in the tank. And I do have two rubber lip plecos in there. And then, of course, all the live bearers we just talked about, you know, they just went to town. And as a team, you see the results. It looks absolutely fantastic. I'm really, really happy with the way this tank's shaping up. So there you go, everybody. The new fish are in the tank. The new lights are all lit up. It's back to its former glory of having all the, you know, light flooding in there the way I used to have it. I used to have two twin tube T5 high output fixtures on this. I was running 200 or 300 watts of light into this tank. It was bright, but that was T5s, and it generated a lot of heat and so on and so forth. So this is probably more light than that, but it's a lot more efficient, and it's a lot cooler temperatures, and overall it's just a lot of light. and we're going to see how this plays out. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. Hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget, this one here is my 40 breeder, is what I'm calling it now. You can look forward to some more real soon, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thanks again.